tonight. So tonight's presentation is going to be our week. Well, it's technically kind of like week 5 or the start of your month 2 if you were to continue with Blue Zones. It's our final week, so this is our capstone presentation. So we want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for showing up for yourselves and for signing up. But most importantly, congratulations for doing this. So what we're going to go through today is recapping a little bit. Oh, sorry, I have a phantom TV I saw that just turns on randomly. We're going to go through and recap a little bit. So we've spent the month going week by week. And the first week, of course, we focused a lot on laying a strong foundation nutritionally. Then in the second week, we focused on community and purpose with Fran. And then in week 3, we focused on not just movement, but moving naturally in our day-to-day routines, in our workday, and in our home. As well as last week, we kind of started to put everything together with the home concept of what is our deeper purpose, our values, but in projecting that in the home in terms of what we spend our time on and what we give our space to, i.e., we talked about having spaces to de-stress in our house, prioritizing meal prep and stocked pantry, as well as sleep and rest. Today, we're going to touch a little bit more on sleep, as that's often a frontier in Blue Zones that is talked about more so in later months, but splashed upon, as you guys saw a bit, where they made the recommendation of, try to nap 20 minutes per day, as it's linked to longevity. So we'll touch a bit on sleep today. But look back at that bigger circle here, your power 9, and I think of our wellness often in these 4 domains. So when you're reflecting upon your goals or the areas that you feel most strong, reflect upon it in terms of the power 9. So, most important, like we said, congratulations. So, you are done with the first 30 days of Blue Zones, whatever that meant to you. If that means tracking diligently and being all in, wonderful. If it's taking bits and pieces each week and trying to incorporate aspects of it, whether one goal or 10 goals, into your weekly regimen, that's wonderful because either way, we're taking the needle and we're moving in a direction of just being our happiest, healthiest, best version of ourselves today than we were yesterday. And the concept of an ever evolving being, too, meaning your goals might change week to week or your needs might change week to week, but it's the concept of staying mindful and present of how well you're showing up for yourself for your future self, not just, for the weekend or for some other, more short-term goal. So, of course, it's being present in the moment and being super like grateful to oneself and celebrating oneself, but it's also saying, how can I keep going now and build off of this? So, like we said, we've been focusing a lot on the Power Nine. So, in your reflection back, a lot of the things that you should have been honing in on and taking away from the challenge would include that moving naturally, we said, having that purpose alignment and checking in what is that purpose. And, like Francesca even has said, that can change across our lifespan. Doesn't always have to be the same thing, and it doesn't have to be our job. Focusing on downshifting in ways that's realistic for us, especially for those of us in New York, living that New York minute. So finding moments to downshift, focusing on that 80% rule, or we really worded it more on Harahashibu, leaving that little bit on the plate, or about 20%. 20% is kind of a lot though. I mean, but it's putting some kind of number to it, but leaving a little bit on the plate. Plant slant, we're not saying vegan, vegetarian, although that's not right or wrong. It depends on our needs, but saying that we're going to be slanted in a direction that the majority of our diet should be plants, right? Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans and legumes, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, they're all plants with garnishes of meat. That's all part of a Mediterranean diet where there's balance between a vegetarian mindset and a carnivore mindset. Mediterranean is truly like a harmony of the two because there's benefits of both. Now, wine at 5, to make it our own, we use that concept not as when we're getting out of work and having like a happy hour beverage, which does sound lovely, but taking that concept and saying, with what we know now in modern day, that alcohol is a Schedule 1 carcinogen, that we're going to take that de-stressing aspect that we can get from having that beverage after work with loved ones, and maybe having a snack with loved ones, or going for a walk with loved ones, or de-stressing in other ways, going to dance and listen to live music in whatever way that calls to us with our loved ones. And then, of course, taking that for what it is, time to de-stress. It's part of kind of downshifting, I see it as well. Right tribe, our tribe could be our family, but sometimes we don't always have the blessing of our family being our tribe, or maybe we make our own tribe with our own chosen friends. Whatever that is for us, that's wonderful. It's about being in a group of like-minded individuals that we feel loved and supported by. Of course, loved ones first, right? We all learned this the hard way probably in high school. It's about quality friendships or quality relationships, not quantity. Sometimes we have to check in with ourselves maybe throughout our lifespan, but it's about loved ones first. And aligning our priorities, our purpose around that. Belonging as well is aligned in there, finding belonging, whether that's in a home, a job, a team, some kind of hobby or activity that we participate in, but it's finding belonging in our community. And that could also just be with the glory of giving back through volunteer work too, right? Finding belonging, walking dogs at a local animal shelter, or serving food at a food shelter, for example. Food kitchen, sorry. Soup kitchen. It's been a long day. So this is just that other graphic that I like to depict it, the Power 9. You could print this and make this your new focal point for this month, even as a reflection upon the work you've already been doing, just to put it on front of mind. Maybe take down that for avoid, for always include foods. Maybe tape those to the inside of a cabinet somewhere else so it's not gone, but a new focal point is in sight and in mind. So it kind of keeps it changing, keeps it fresh. Of course, now that we finished up officially the 30 days, in that reflection, you can start to take your true vitality test again, your happiness test, and do your purpose checkup once more if you feel that the time is right, that you want to compare from where you started to now. If you want to do it more so quarterly, that you're saying, I really want to commit to this for a year. Okay, I still think it's good to maybe do the first 30 days and then do quarterly from there, just as a way to say, hey, where am I improving and where can I focus some energy on getting better, right? So it's always that athlete mindset where no one's ever perfect, we're never going to be perfect, and it's not planning to be perfect, but just how can I further hone in on the areas that I might need a little more support. But first is acknowledging what are those areas. So sometimes doing these check-ins just really help with that accountability, and that first corner of, any wellness program is what kind of data am I using to say, am I getting better or not? And it can be a conglomerate of data, as we've talked about in the past. It could be, how is my body composition moving? How are my labs moving? But how is my vitality test, my happiness test, my purpose check-in going as well? Um, okay. So part of what we're reflecting upon though in celebration of the last 30 days is your social relationships and sense of purpose. As we've talked about the statistics that it can improve longevity by up to 15 years when someone is lonely versus not lonely. If we are more social in our later years, it can improve longevity up to 15 years about. So engaging with your tribe, when moving forward, reflecting on ways that maybe we can nourish other relationships that maybe we haven't had time to get to, right? Maybe I made that goal on one of the last weeks, on week 2, where we wanted to try to connect with an old friend or a loved one. Maybe you work that goal in once a month. Maybe there's a friend or loved one you have a spot on, Wednesdays when I'm on my way home from work. I like to drive and catch up with people hands free. Maybe that's a spot where you pick a friend that you haven't talked to in a few months that you call. So it's more systematic as well. Purpose, pursue your purpose. So reflect on what brings you meaning in your life and continue to invest in those activities. So that's going to change throughout your life. And it's just important just to check in on what's most serving you at this point in time, as we've said. I think it can become a lot though when you're like, what is my purpose? And then we think about our activity and we think about our other goals with regard to our medical care. Your purpose should drive most things. That should be your umbrella. And then you want to think of your goals in terms of different domains. So often when I'm reflecting upon my goals and writing them out, making them tangible, making them something physical, I like to recommend for patients like creating like a movement goal. And that could be something like I want to start to walk around the block after work 2 to 3 times per week. That could be a wonderful goal, but it could also be I want to train to do a 5K, run or walk. It could be something like I want to get my 500-meter row down below 2 minutes. Of course, that's more short term, but of course, if it's continuing to evolve under the umbrella of pushing myself athletically to help continue and keep me moving into my 90s, that can be a worthwhile way to like organize your goals. Healthy eating the same way, right? Your goal could be I want to follow a Mediterranean diet lifelong to pursue, longevity, right, as that greater purpose. And in that healthy eating, you measure in and say, okay, well, I feel like my vegetables could be a little better, or I notice I'm having a lot more, processed sugars than I'd want to, and then setting just a small goal around that. People could focus on just exercise and nutrition, get that to a really strong spot. If social connections or finding purpose is an area that is lacking, of course, mental health could be the first frontier. So it's saying, okay, what is the priority for me? What's impacting my life the most? Do I really want to focus on having more, social support around me because it'll make me happier, more motivated, might help me to get out more and walk and exercise and treat my body more with care. Of course, check in more with your mental health provider if you're working with somebody on how to properly navigate the priorities of these different goals, but it just might help to organize them into these domains similar to how Blue Zones laid it out for us during the challenge. Of course, a vision board I put at the bottom. So when you can see it, it makes it more tangible, it makes it more realistic. It can also be a great low cost night in with a loved one or a friend, just going through old newspapers or magazines and making a fun vision board and setting intentions for whether it's your personal life, your career, or a combination. So new habits. So with Blue Zones, I'm going to share a website with you in our conclusion email with the recording tonight. And it's got all of the PDFs that have been getting attached to the modules for each week of the first 30 days. After the first 30 days of Blue Zones challenge is over, it progresses to monthly sheets for different goals and activities so that you guys will, if you want to continue to pursue this, you would have access to those. And they have little tracking boxes on there as well if you'd want to utilize those cheat sheets further. Of course, if you want to utilize your Excel spreadsheet further, or your Google Sheet, I should say, further, continue to do that as well. That's fine. You can keep building extra weeks onto the tabs, and we'll get to the official challenge winner at the end too. So if you do continue that going forward into Blue Zones, the activities that they laid out for this month would include canceling cable, which is pretty wonderful actually when you first hear that. They're kind of getting at canceling the TV in general. I had a dietetics professor who she actually ended up running the graduate program for us. She had no TV in her house. Husband's military, they're very by the book, and she did not want to let a TV in her house because she felt it would take away from her reading and her productivity. And man, is that woman very productive. So I can't knock her. But that they're in part of what they're getting at is canceling cable will therefore or decrease screen time. And when we're not in front of a screen, what are we likely doing? Activities that give life, cooking, playing music or listening to music, getting outside and downshifting with loved ones, exercising, doing yard work, walking to the market, giving back in our community in other ways, getting involved with our neighbors, socializing, playing cards, playing chess in the park, etc. So canceling cable is one of the big steps with Blue Zones. Another big one is adopting a dog or a cat. They say a dog because it gets you more out in the community, walking your dog in the neighborhood, having to socialize your dog, at different events and spaces. Of course, whenever we get a dog and we're socializing our animal, you can get a list from Petco or PetSmart or your vet of all different people and places and sounds to try to expose your dog to before ages 1 or 2, for example. So one was people with wheelchairs, which always confused me. And then my father actually has a wheelchair. My dog always wanted to attack the wheels of his wheelchair. So it took working that list and understanding that, and it helped. So explore a new religious or spiritual tradition. Again, this is within what's comfortable for you. It could even be pulling an affirmation card in the morning from your bathroom sink, right? We don't have to get, it could get as deep as you want to get in that aspect. It could be meditation, right, in the morning or at night. It could be joining a different yoga studio that has a different method or deeper meaning behind what they're practicing and what they speak to in session, etc. Another one that they hone in on this month is touching on sleep again. Hang light blocking window shades or like a blackout curtain, especially if we're shift workers, just to help improve overall quality of sleep. Again, Hara-Hashi-Bu is a continued thread all throughout. So that 80% full or more so just keeping mindful of your satiety throughout meals, trying to leave a little something on the plate. But remember, Hara-Hashi-Bu is really about eating for enjoyment, but also just noting the sensations of your body as it becomes full versus letting the plate tell our body, hey, we're full or we've reached the end of the meal. More so you note when you reach the end of the meal. So leaving that little bit on the plate can somewhat symbolize stopping because of our own bodily cues that we are full. Put indoor plants in your home. So of course it does help to purify the air. Certain plants, like snake plants, for example, or can add great odors like eucalyptus. It also boosts our mood to have life and green color or green in our eyes. So of course, adding plants to our home. If mental health support is something that we're looking for and feeling that we're in need for, 100%, we encourage it. So, of course, that's one of the Blue Zone's principles for month 5. I wanted month 5, sorry, technically week 5, month 2. So, I added schedule with a registered dietitian and I also added keep up with health screening slash medical appointments. See it as like at least one time a year, whether it be January or July, some marker of the year that all right, I tend to schedule my primary care physician, my endocrinologist, or my cardiologist, etc., so that you're in a routine, you're in a schedule. But this is your reminder that if we haven't done that yet this year and we're a little behind, please make sure to check in and keep up with your routine health screenings, as of course we'd be completely remiss without that. So of course Blue Zones focuses a lot on longevity from the natural and traditional worlds, but we are so blessed to live in a society that does have these means, so we want to take the benefits of the natural and traditional worlds and fuse it with the blessings that we have today. So, of course, if we're due for a colonoscopy, we do not want to skip that, right? Colon cancer is on the rise. So, this is what I mean by keeping up with our health screenings, right? It's things that might be uncomfortable, but it's that short-term discomfort for the more long-term comfort, right? So another one they add is enroll in an automatic savings or investment plan. It's just meaning start to think about retirement if you haven't already. But of course, this is more of a nutrition focused practice, but that is a key part of Blue Zones. It's getting on top of that Moai aspect of the women in Okinawa, Japan, who are the oldest living women in the world, whose husbands who had unfortunately passed on after their husbands had passed on, the women started to share resources with each other and really help to support each other in the long term. So that's part of what they're getting at is if you have a stable base, it can also help to relieve stress and anxiety as we get older, which we know stress can leave impacts on our health and our body. Sunday meal prep, of course, we focused a lot last week on meal prep and adding that as a system within our home, and meaning that meal prep can be just planning or thinking for the next, again, I have this phantom TV, next meal, or it could be for the next 2 days or the next week, looking at what is realistic for you. Blue Zones is very market style oriented, meaning they go to the market on their way home from being in town for the day and they see what is fresh and came into the market and they cook it fresh that day. So that's more traditional Blue Zones. The way we want to try to incorporate meal prep and that aspect into our day to day is if that's realistic for us and we can go to the butcher or the fish market or, the local farm and piecemeal, our groceries together, that's wonderful. But in the modern day, sometimes that's very hard. So we want to make sure that we have everything we need accessible for what's realistic for us. So with meal prep, it could just be this is my weekly routine. I cut up the vegetables when I come home from the store or when it comes in from the CSA and I roast them on the grill or I roast them on a sheet pan in the oven. I pre-cut everything, so if I need to grab some fruit as a snack or as a topping, it's ready, right? It's that I pre-marinate and pre-cut the meat so that later on in the week we can use it much easier and it's much more time efficient and we're much more likely to have a home cooked meal. So this is where we could take those systematic things that would go on in a market style way of eating or living and try to incorporate it in our day to day or our week to week is by having these systematic things that we just try to do. Continue group engagement is a part of this month's activities and goals, of course. And that's a good one for this month when a lot of things start to come to an end. So when school year starts to come to an end, trying to continue some connections or group activities for those that, it applies to. And then walking weekly, right? So for many of us, if we had a routine going on during the school year of walking, that we want to try to still keep that up if the hours or shifts start to change at work. But of course, the walking weekly is going to be a key pillar of Blue Zones every month, ongoing. Next is sustaining healthy habits and making it a part of your routine. So, like we said, make the habits permanent and structure your days around them. So, I placed like an image at the bottom that depicts more so block scheduling. So, this is part of where I was coming from when I was mentioning meal prep earlier, that you want to block in and say, okay, on Sundays or on Saturdays, we get the groceries. When we come back from grocery shopping, I block in a half hour to unload the groceries, cut up a few things, put some meats into a glass container, maybe cut off, trim some of the fat or cut it down and marinate it, etc. It's already built in as a habit into your routine so that okay, we just do this after, say, church on Sundays or after our walk on Saturdays, that I don't schedule other things right after that because I want to leave space in my week for this. And if something does take that place, that's fine. I know I have to move this block somewhere else at least. So at least I note that I have to shift it. So it does help you keep that structure, that organization with our habits. Is this block scheduling kind of a mindset? It can also apply with our walks, our exercise routine. If we block it on our calendar, like as if it's an appointment, we'll tend to not schedule on top of it, right? Because we'll see it as a physical thing blocked on our work calendar, say. Stay engaged, like we've just been saying in the previous slide. Other ways to continue building your habits is to start small and build gradually. So anytime during a challenge, that's part of the challenge is that it's a lot of goals set at once. Normally in counseling, we like to do goals much more systematic, right? Usually no more than two or three at a time, but that's what makes a challenge different from one-on-one counseling. So you could take these ideas that came in as goals throughout the challenge and start to pick a couple of them and really track them, make it enjoyable. So it's not like a true challenge. So it's not so much at once, that you could really take your time each week and hone in on a few that call to you. Set a clear, achievable goal. So maybe you track other measures. So if it's the walking goal that you really want to focus on increasing your weekly walks, that's wonderful. Tracking steps, tracking time walking using like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or some kind of pedometer could be another way to track and make it more accountable so that you're seeing it each moment when you want to check in on your watch, whether at night before you go to bed or, at midpoint during the day. But then with your goals, make it social. So if it's fun, it kind of just becomes a thing you do. It doesn't feel laborious, of course, it doesn't feel like a drag. But also making it social is going to help us in other facets that it's going to help others in our community start to want to take on and enjoy these healthy hobbies and habits. And then in turn, it does, feel good to help others too. So when you make it social in that regard, you never know how much you impact other people. So it could also just be, growing your community from that standpoint with Blue Zones. So you never know if you're actually becoming that centenarian role model along the way. So I always like to think of it from that standpoint. Focus in on your why, check in on your why, and put images of your why or triggers for your why in sight and in mind that's, feels comfortable for you. Most importantly, is be patient, always about consistency over perfection. So with Blue Zones also, aside from the nutritional and exercise related goals, focuses a lot on mental health, stress management, and financial health. So these are just some tips that can help along the way, like reaching out for support when we need it, practicing self-care, staying connected with loved ones, the 4-7-8 technique I want to highlight because a lot of these are also very self-explanatory, but the 4-7-8 is focusing on inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 7 counts, and exhaling for 8, which can help to lower your heart rate. If you're inhaling longer and exhaling shorter, can actually increase your heart rate. So when you're trying to unwind, the 4-7-8 technique is one. Another common one is box breathing, where you inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, and then hold for 4 counts. That one's much easier to remember and often the model used in yoga, which can be done anywhere, anytime, any place. So yoga is a wonderful practice. So I wanted to touch a little bit on sleep, leading into the end of the challenge, and of course giving you a great launching off point for just something a little different we haven't been able to get much into in the past. So sleep can really impact our health from multiple standpoints, right? Many of you may have seen the literature on sleep and Alzheimer's disease risk. Of course, risk for heart disease and diabetes goes up when we're not sleeping as much. So sleep is your body's chance to recover and unwind. If you're constantly revving the engine or running the car, running the motor, that motor's going to start to run hot. It needs to rest. It needs to, you need to turn the engine off sometimes so it can repair and cool off, right? That heat can go down in the engine. So it's kind of similar. So your blood sugars are a barometer for stress on the body. So if your blood sugars are going up, sometimes that can be a sign that we might not be sleeping enough. We could be over exercising. We could be over stressed mentally, emotionally, physically. So same with heart disease. So if we are not getting a greater depth of sleep, our heart rate is supposed to drop when we're sleeping. So if we are eating too late before bed, caffeine too late before bed, overstimulated too late before bed, for a whole slew of reasons, it can delay when our heart rate starts to drop. And our heart rate is a resting heart rate is one of those barometers for rest and stress on the body. So if your heart isn't getting that chance to recover and slow down, and you're having a delayed drop in heart rate when you're sleeping, it can be putting you at risk for heart disease. I love measuring this. We'll get to sleep measures, of course, down the road, but we can measure this, which is really cool with modern technology. Of course, sleep reduces stress and anxiety. If I am not sleeping well, I am so much more on edge or agitated. I am not my best self if I am not sleeping well. Sleep also impacts our digestive tract. So if we are not sleeping enough, your gut lining doesn't get that chance to really repair, and your gut is often working and moving when it needs to be resting. So you can see symptoms of acid reflux or sometimes IBS, similar symptoms, diarrhea, constipation with those with poor sleep. On the image here, though, you see a pie chart. That pie chart shows just three hormones that play a picture with sleep. There's a lot more. But of course, when we have a lack of sleep, we have decreased leptin hormone, which is, of course, what makes us feel more full. And then we have increased ghrelin hormone. Think ghrelin, like the hunger gremlin, or growlin, right? Gremlin, growlin, or ghrelin, growlin. So when you have increased ghrelin, and you're sleep deprived, we have increased propensity to increase our calories by almost about 300 calories per day. And typically, in terms of those quick sources of energy in our mind, like saturated fats and especially sugar, because sometimes our hypothalamus gets confused whether we're hungry, we're tired, or we're thirsty. And we can think we want food when really we're just tired or we're really just thirsty. So sometimes we interpret that need for energy as energy from food versus energy from sleep. So it can increase cravings, but also increases our cortisol hormone, which increases our blood sugar and propensity to store around the midsection. So sleep is really important. I cannot underestimate or underexpress how important sleep is for you, especially if you're someone who's trying to focus on physical goals, especially in the gym, like trying to gain muscle as well. So, sleep impacts how we feel, and how we feel impacts how we eat, how we move, how we live our life, right? Like I said, I'm probably going to be more permeable to stress, right? So, if a similar stressor, if I'm, say, on 8 hours of sleep versus 5 hours of sleep, I have one stressor come my way, I might react to that stressor much better on 8 hours of sleep versus 5 hours of sleep, for example. Same thing can happen with food. So sometimes we have inadequate sleep, we're not in the best mood or in the best space, can sometimes trigger an argument or something just not to go well or go our way. And then that causes emotional distress. And for some leads to grabbing that food item because we feel that extra agitation. So sometimes it can react more in that regard. But in general, I often find it's more people are looking for food because of that need for energy when really they're pretty tired or they're sleeping. It's also just physiologically the body is overstressed. If it's not recovering well, you're not going to get the most out of your workouts. You're not going to feel the energy to go to the gym if you're sleep deprived often. So that's also part of it too. Of course, though, right? Benefits of getting a good night's sleep, it's not just in terms of our heart health, our blood sugar health, and risk for Alzheimer's, like we were saying, but in that same context, when we get a better night's sleep, we have improved memory and cognitive functioning. So Brian, my fiance, knows how crazy I am about it. Like if we are doing something, I have work the next day, for me, especially with patients, I notice a difference if I'm sleep deprived or not. So I really do not mess around with that much, and you'll see like retainment of memory, or just notice I'm not as sharp with my words if I'm sleep deprived. So check in on just certain things for yourself and say, okay, when I'm sleep deprived, how do I perform with my walk? Do I tend to walk a little faster? Do I have a greater rate of perceived exertion? Pick something in your day and just compare it when sleep deprived versus without. Reduce stress and anxiety, of course, like we were saying, if we get a better night's sleep. We were also saying improvements in digestion. It does help promote a healthier gut microbiome and can help with better weight maintenance, like we were just mentioning. And most importantly, sleep is stellar, not just important, but sleep is stellar for detox. So when you're sleeping is when the custodians of your body are going to work, right? So when we get what's it called? Who's the guy that's supposed to leave sand in your eyes? I forget the character. But, when you have sand in your eyes, or they call it eye boogers, right? That's your body detoxing excess minerals in the middle of the night. When you're sweating, when you have dry mouth, that film around your mouth. And of course, when you wake up and you use the restroom, your body is focusing on getting rid of waste products at night and clearing it when you go to wake up. Sometimes the sweat is for other reasons, though, like hormone related. A method that I really like to help with sleep is the 8-3-2-1-0 method. It's to stop drinking caffeine 8 hours before bed, aim to stop eating 3 hours before bed, aim to stop drinking 2 hours before bed so we're not waking up to have to use the restroom for those of us who might be a lighter sleeper in that regard. Aim to reduce blue light and stress 1 hour before bed. The blue light glasses, if you do wear glasses, your optometrist can actually add that to your prescription based on your coverage. And aim to hit the snooze button 0 times. This can be a winning recipe for a more restful night's sleep and a better recovery. So it's the 8-3-2-1-0 method. 3-2-1-0 is easy. You just have to remember eight. um, but course, what if I'm a shift worker? So we have many individuals that might be, parents of young children, cops, firemen, nurses, EMS, security work, etc. We have many individuals in our community that might be working rotating shifts. So you want to build time into your daily schedule and block schedule and sleep, of course, to try to be as consistent as possible. So if you're working all nights for a week, try to sleep in a sleep schedule of all nights, well, all days while you're sleeping. If you are on permanent night shifts, it's a little easier to keep regularity versus those like Suffolk PD is 1 week on, 1 week off. So you kind of want to embrace the this is my day shift routine, this is my night shift routine. When working nights, try to keep your sleep so you wake up as close to the start of the next night shift and rather than going to sleep as soon as you get home in the morning. So you push it a little bit. So you get home and kind of get your day going. Or alternatively, you could split sleep people have done where they first come home, split their sleep for a few hours and like sleep as soon as they get home, don't eat right away, then have a little something to eat, work around the home, and then take a small nap after they get some work done around the home and then go into work. Everyone's a little different, so I don't like to get into those specifics because that's to me, I think is so individualized on what the person needs to do. But usually it's more so just trying to have this is your day shift routine, this is your night shift routine, and trying to keep to some kind of a routine, I think is more important. Sleep environment, whether you are a shift worker or not, dark room, we want to have as minimal light as possible. Very cool room. That's why in Blue Zones they had one of the activities be set your thermometer for your room to 64 degrees. Blackout shades or earplugs if you tend to have a significant other that might come in a little later than you. The earplugs concept might scare a little of some of us. So for me, I like to just maybe do one or just the eye mask. Of course, could be a good tool if the blackout shades are not as realistic. And of course, the sound machine. Keep your phone on silent or do not disturb. Do not disturb, you can also filter it that certain people can get through with messages versus others. And then to create a winding down routine. Having these routines and having this structure helps your body as your body runs on a circadian rhythm. So your body runs on a series of small clocks between your digestion and when you eat, when you go to the bathroom, to when you sleep, etc. So with sleep, you can do these circadian rhythm boosters before bed so you can tell your body, hey, when I start to do these activities, it winds my body down before bed. So when you do this enough in a routine, it starts to cue to your body to start to release melatonin and that this is time to start preparing for bed. So hence the evening hygiene routine and then going in and stretching and maybe doing the box breathing that we touched upon um, can also start to cue to your body, all right, this is time to rest and not time to get excitable and more elevated, say. These are some other more holistic approaches to help with sleep. Of course, one that people do like to turn to is melatonin. That I like to say, please like use caution with. Some individuals hormonally actually don't produce a lot of melatonin. Of course, you'd want to test that to note if you are underproducing melatonin or not, but often we start to supplement it and your body becomes reliant on it. and you might not need it. I usually like to recommend more so magnesium, specifically glycinate before bed, or different adaptogens as needed if those more holistic measures are not, working or as consistent for the person to turn to. Like a passion flower tea, a chamomile tea, a sleepy time tea can be great. Also, the sleepy time tea or the throat coat tea too, really good if you have a little indigestion when you start to lay down. But of course, cutting off eating 2, ideally 3 hours before bed really does do the trick a lot if you find you have some indigestion going into bed. Ginger tea helps with motility. So, some other nutritional approaches to help sleep is the fasting concept, right? Because if I'm eating right before bed, not just from a digestion and acid reflux standpoint from for many of us, but also it's, giving my body fuel to work, right? It's going to start to put sugar into my bloodstream. So I'm not going to be as deeply rested as I could be if my body wasn't working. And of course, if my blood sugars were not going as high. So eating before bed makes a huge impact. So the fasting concept for us women, we should be more so curtailing from at night, that concept of intermittent fasting, but still trying to eat within about 2 hours upon waking for what's realistic for our schedules. But you really want to pull more from the evening than from the morning. Men, it doesn't matter as much, but I still lean more that direction, and I do still see more favorable results in that direction of cutting off earlier before bed versus cutting off in the morning. Uh, do you wake in the middle of the night and can't fall back asleep? So, of course, that could have to do with blood sugar regulation, that could have to do with hormones, that could have to do with water timing. So, you'd want to look at, of course, meal timing and water timing 2, 3 hours before bed if we're catching ourselves waking up and not able to relax back to sleep in the middle of the night. The other thing to think about, though, why I bring up hormones is cortisol as well, right? If you're stewing, if you're stressed, if you have some thoughts that just keep ruminating on the mind, waking you up, I like to recommend leaving a journal or some kind of means of recording next to the bed that you can write those thoughts down or voice record it down. So you take that proverbial sticky note off the brain and you get it out somewhere else. So it's not like one more thing you have to hold on to and remember and retain and just don't forget, one more stressor. Sometimes that could be helpful. If you are going to have a snack before bed, like maybe you're really focusing on gaining a lot of muscle, right? Or you work out really early in the morning for certain competitions, that if you are going to have a snack, you want to have protein and or healthy fat paired with a carb that is complex. So a complex carb is a fruit, a vegetable, a whole grain, a bean or a legume. So it's a complex meaning that it still has fiber. It hasn't been milled and refined down to remove that fiber, to remove those B vitamins, right? So it's more complex, being that it has those important nutrients to it and it's still in more of a whole form. You want to pair that with protein under healthy fat because pairing fiber with protein and fat, they're more complex nutrients. It's nature's GLP or Ozempic. It slows down digestion in that winning combo. So these are just examples in the protein, fat, carbohydrate section. So we didn't have a traditional module for this, the week for the not week 5, but the seminar 5 presentation. So in this email with the recording, I'm going to attach this presentation PowerPoint. You want to aim, like we're saying when we're talking about circadian rhythm, you want to aim for a consistent sleep wake schedule, right? So if your schedule, like for example, my schedule with work, right? Monday, Tuesday, I work more like a day shift. Wednesday, Thursday, I work more like almost a night shift. So if not true night, but just later. So if I was sleeping later on Wednesday, Thursday, that might really mess up my week versus, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, wake up the same time across the board is the ideal goal, is what we're saying by a consistent wake schedule, especially when you're talking about the weekends too. I know it can sound funny, but you want to try to wake up around the same time in the morning that you normally wake up during the work week, and go to bed around the same time at night that you normally go to bed during the work week. We know that's not always realistic because of social jet lag, but maybe the weekend is where you try to plant one of those or two of those 20-minute naps to really help to recoup that. But then your body also stays in rhythm with waking up and going to bed around the same times. And that's just going to make it easier for you to keep to that routine when your body physiologically is in that habit of going to bed and waking up around the same times. Um, you can use different, technology to set up that bedtime alert, especially if you have an iPhone. This chart below is a great little tool. Of course, we all can, do the math, of course, but if you're aiming to sleep if you're aiming to wake up at like 5:30 a.m. or 7:30 a.m. or 10 a.m., you could see under the wake time column, you want to start your pre-bedtime ritual or routine around 8:30 and 9 p.m. in this pre-bed ritual start time column. So for example, if you're aiming to wake up at 5:30 a.m., you want to go to sleep by 9:30 p.m. That means we're not winding down and putting our feet underneath the sheets at 9:30 p.m. We're actually going to start that process by about 8:30 at least. So go into the bathroom, do the evening hygiene, brush our teeth, that routine, and then go into the bedroom and maybe, stretch, pray, calling a loved one would usually be before that. It could be reading, it could be journaling, um, it could be looking through a photo album, something relaxing for you, but something non-stimulating. Like I like to use the example of just please, for the love of God, don't be watching the news. Don't be watching something like Game of Thrones, something really stifling or elevating, sometimes in a good way, right? Like when it's House of the Dragon time on Sunday nights, I want to be watching that before I go to sleep. But I have to tell myself, nope, watch that on Monday because you don't need to be up so late and also elevated. And then, that's going to push you awake and thinking later and later into the night. And then, that's when 5 o'clock comes around and you're on like 4 hours of sleep. So it serves, no good to get stuck in something. Like I have a lot of patients that mention like binge watching a show at night. I think it's just staying present and saying, how is this time, best allotted? If I'm getting stuck into this show and it's 11, 12 o'clock, what's my future self going to say? How is this choice going to impact my morning or my work day or even my day off? And how is this time being robbed of me? Because everything in life or everything in this world, unfortunately, comes down to energy, right? So if I'm using my energy now to be awake and watching this show, is this worth the energy that it's taking from me later in the day? And often it's not worth it. Okay, so using technology to help with sleep, I think is a game changer. I used to think I was such a good sleeper. And then I started actually using like Fitbit for a long time when I was first when tracking your sleep was first a thing. I feel like Fitbit was one of the bigger ones to first come out with it. And that one we even used for studies at Stony Brook. We would give our patients like the Fitbit Alta, and we would use it as some kind of a measure on tracking is their sleep, going up, going down in some form within the program. It's not the most accurate measure, but it's some kind of a measure. I love the Aura Ring for sleep measures as well, but I think it's really important when you're looking at any of these sleep tracking apps or beds, like there's, I think, Aid and Sleep Number has sleep tracking features too. It's wonderful, but it's what you do with the data and also understanding that the data isn't always the most accurate. It's the same with steps, it's the same with calories burned. It's noting that is the trend getting better, right? Meaning, is the average amount of sleep going up or down? And what am I contributing to that, right? So it's thinking like a scientist of how the tool is working versus just letting the tool tell you what it is. It's truly seeing it as only a tool. It's not the be all end all. So to then make your best guess or your clinical judgment, right? So tracking sleep can be really helpful. I love the Aura Ring because it tells me, if you're a morning chronotype or an evening chronotype, you should know that about yourself, without the ring kind of thing. But it's cool to see that. It tells you how your sleep latency is, meaning, does it take you 10 minutes to fall asleep? Does it take you on average 2 hours to fall asleep? A lot of these watches, like the Fitbit, tell you about REM sleep and deep sleep. It's not the most accurate, but then again, like I'm saying, you're trending that information, right? So overall, is REM sleep going up? Is deep sleep going up, right? Or will tell you if your resting heart rate dropped late in the middle of the night. Uh, some apps let you track your caffeine to say, okay, how caffeine sensitive am I? In general, in general, it's best to just abstain. Um, but yeah, knowledge is power. So the first thing, just like we were saying about being aware of whatever it is that you're trying to set your goal or intention towards, if you feel like, okay, I normally get 4 to 6 hours of sleep, that's the area I'm really weak. I need to focus in on sleep. My diet's pretty good. I still get to the gym even though I'm on 4 to 6 hours of sleep. I really need to hone in on that. Make this your focus then, but then you need to track whatever it is you're trying or measure whatever it is that you're trying to change, whether you write it on a piece of paper when you wake up and go to bed, or you jot down, okay, I slept X amount of hours from what I remember shutting my eyes, or using technology like this. But being aware is the first cornerstone of noting, am I progressing? What is your baseline? What about naps in the weekends? So I got a little ahead of myself talking about naps, obviously, but utilize naps for the weekends if it's a little hard to try to get them in during the Monday through Friday. Use it as a way to help recover from that social jet lag. And if you're out late the night before, just because there was a family barbecue or something harmless, and you still wake up around the same time because you're in, rhythm that you get up in the morning still at the same time you get up for work. A lot of us will mention that in counseling. Then try to get in a nap, maybe around 3, 4 o'clock, not too late that it disrupts you, later in the day for your next night's sleep. Lastly, one of the other topics in, this last week of Blue Zones or this, second month is what I should say going forward, is the concept of romanticizing your life and your daily life, right? With Blue Zones, a lot of the things that are recommended are simple ways that our human species has evolved as ways of living life, ways of partying, right? Was playing music, dancing with loved ones, talking, socializing, being out, giving back. So of course, romanticizing your life is about seeing those little things and just expressing gratitude towards it, right? Like having a beautiful little mug that you just love, right? Like, okay, I'm not just gonna grab some white, mug from the dollar store. Maybe this is a special mug that is from my, former patient gave this to me, and when I see this, it makes me happy, or it's something that's just pretty, or it's a Disney character that reminds you of something joyful, that you have these little touches in your day that make, the simple things more enjoyable and happy, but also placing gratitude towards simple things that we might not, that we might take for granted, like setting a table and lighting the candle, making the space a beautiful space and not just, oh, this is where we eat dinner, right? Making it a place you want to be. It also helps to regulate our nervous system a bit and help us to wind down. So, of course, we want our home to be a space that we feel most restful because our defenses are more down. So, for some of us, sleep can be really challenging. And if that is something that you are running into, of course, it's good to talk with a mental health provider because sleep can also be signs or symptoms of other stresses we might be coping with. But creating a Zen den is how I like to phrase it, or last presentation, we were talking about creating like a de-stressing space. Make your bed can be your Zen den, right? Of course, your bed is really just for sleep, very minimal things, right? No food and how what the Gen Z, yeah, Gen Z calls it like what not vegging, rotting. We don't want to encourage rotting in our bed is what they call it. but make your bed a space that you feel really comfortable, really at ease, so that you can allow for a joyful and safe, night's sleep. Of course, consider getting, the essential oils, getting extra soft sheets, getting the eye mask if you'd like. Look to, shut the TV off or have no TV in the bedroom. That's actually what the American Pediatrics Association says for kids, and I think it should follow suit throughout our life. But yeah, so sleep is not a trait, right? And it's not, some people feel like guilty or shameful if they struggle with sleep. I've run into in the past. It's something that is not permanent. It's something that can get better. It's something that we have to work on though. So sleep, by no means as dietitians are we sleep experts in any way, but we can help support you in your goals, in your well-being in counseling. So if you mention that you're having, barriers with your sleep, we can talk about, of course, nutrition to support a better night's sleep, and also other professionals that might be able to help support you in getting a better night's sleep. So, of course, this is a place to talk about it, as we'd be really missing out on your goals if we're not talking about sleep. Like with all of this, with blue zones, right? I wanted to highlight when we first start a lot of the challenges, we go over this diet paradigm, right? Of this restriction and cutting out foods and this feeling of deprivation. And it leaves us to feel the short-term success. And then the cravings come back because there was no real habits made. There was no real value made behind wanting to make those habits, or it wasn't really done under a way that is, more gradual. So, for blue zones, we want this to be something more long-term and sustainable for you guys. So really work at it, really continue to focus in on the pieces that you set out for yourself. Set those small goals if you want to continue into the following months. I'm going to send that link out, but you can also bring that into counseling too. And we could take those small goals from blue zones and continue that one-on-one in the ways that, most resonate and stick out with your needs. So of course, as we're coming to the conclusion of the end of the program, we want to, if your goal is body comp, to remeasure body comp. So please feel free to come on in. I'll put the hours in the email, but same as last time. Bernadette's there Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. She's there from when elevation opens, about like 5 a.m. to about 1 p.m., specifically 1 p.m. And on Sundays, elevation opens a little later. I want to say 6 or 7 a.m. I can double check that when I write the hours. And of course, if you can't make those hours, just let us know. That's not a problem. You can also do these measures during one-on-one counseling if you are in one-on-one counseling. If you're not, come on in. If you have questions about your measures, you can send an image of it to me, or let me know that you used your phone number as your passcode, and I could print out your results. I can go over what that means for you. Definitely, I could write out that if you have questions. The vitality test, the happiness test, and the purpose checkup. If you are ready to do that, please do so, especially if you did it the first week of the challenge. I'm more encouraging of do it, and then maybe do it quarterly or monthly, depending on how aggressively you want to go after these goals and what's realistic for you. If you're doing the body comp, these are just some individuals always like to ask me what's the ideal ranges for muscle mass. Of course, it's just saying, how much do I have? Am I getting better? Am I losing muscle? Right? That's a big piece of it. What's ideal for body fat? So this is here as well. And again, for a lot of us, it's just, what do I have? Am I getting better? Right? But of course, some of us like those charts, and I agree, it's important to note. This is again just that visual example of like, what's your why or what's your purpose, right? You could change your why to what's your purpose. I think what's your purpose is just a little bit more specific, but overall, seeing that this is the bigger picture to why you are, focusing on these nutrition, exercise, mental health related goals. So with this, it kind of helps to give another visual to this. So we have the intrinsic and the extrinsic motivators. So a big reason why we love blue zones is it's very intrinsically motivated, right? It's motivated by a want to belong in our community and to give love to not just ourselves, but to our community. It's led with passion, right? Like if you watch a lot of the Blue Zones documentary, you see a lot of these centenarians. Like the woman singing is so cute and playing music. You could tell she's just so happy and so joyful just to be playing music, and she's just leaning into what she loves doing and what she has passion for. You have the older gentleman on the ranch, right? Just leaning into staying physically active, being on the ranch, and loving being with the cattle and the horses on the ranch. So it's about having fun with what you're doing too, having fun with the people that you're around. If you don't like what's around you, change your surroundings. And I mean that in the best kind of way, right? Like if we're not happy at our job, then we find a job that we are happy, right? I know that's so much easier said than done, but it's about showing up for you and living life for you in the way that feels right for you. Extrinsic motivation is very carrot and the stick. It's not bad. It just can't be the main motivator. So we want the intrinsic motivation to be 80%. I like to cook. I want to learn more about how to fuel myself. I want to be active. It feels so good to be outside and moving my body, right? That's intrinsic motivation. I just can't wait to feel my best and to learn the ways to best respect my body and keep feeling best and showing up and being my best self and checking off all my other goals, right? Where extrinsic is good as like a 20 percenter, right? Like I have this 5K I really want to do. Oh, I'm getting kind of stressed. That 5K is starting to come around. I really need to get moving. I need to get to the gym. I got to keep moving because I do really love it when I'm there, but I just have a hard time getting there, right? So it gives that extra push, that little carrot in the stick. So there's some kind of reward or like a fear of failure, or for some it's punishment. I don't think it should ever come from that standpoint. Um, so it's just be really careful about external motivators. When some individuals make their external motivator like, I'm going to drop 50 pounds for a wedding in a month. That's not a good external motivator. Um, but it could be, there's this dress that my mom passed down to me that's really special, and I would really love to fit into that one day. Or I've had some patients fit back into their former academy uniform after, being a police officer and retiring. So that could just always be a big one. I don't think it should always be the academy uniform because we're a different person now in a good way, but, finding those other motivators. Self-love guides the way all the way, right? So secretly that self-love is actually on the girl's sweater here in this picture. So that is the main thing, right? So when we're doing this, that's the root of intrinsic motivation. It's about also having discipline, communication with yourself and your support team and your loved ones, showing up about and being consistent, which is more important than being perfect, being mindful and aware of what we're doing, trying to stay present, and most importantly, the ism fail to prepare, prepare to fail, right? We want to prepare for what we can do, right? Can we lay out our clothes the night before? Can we lay out our breakfast in the fridge the next night? Can we plan ahead, what our gym regimen is going to be so that when we show up to the gym, we already know what we're going to do. Make it easy for you. With Blue Zones, I didn't want to leave off without talking about this because, again, Blue Zones is very tradition oriented, which is wonderful and amazing, and that's what we're pulling from is the great things about, past societies and values in, a lifelong human culture that brings us to today. However, there's the benefits that we have of modern medicine that many individuals do not have access to in these cultures, right? So we're not saying to be like Brian Johnson and, you know, live very by the data set, but it's also to take what's good that we know about the past traditional ways of living and current traditional ways of living that's still going on today in some areas and merging it with functional aspects nowadays. So saying, I want to live to be 100, I want to be my best, happiest centenarian self. So these are just some labs that are good to be aware of. Any of my patients, I really try to run a lot of these, or at least first get a baseline on of some of these on you guys. And some might not be as needed depending on the situation. But overall, Many of us should look into getting most of these tests done or at least considered for. So hemoglobin, A1C, especially over the age of 50, absolutely. Fasting insulin. A C-reactive protein tells you a bit about your total body inflammation, right? So you usually run that first, and then you're trying to find what's the source of this person's inflammation and see where that could be coming from, and you get more specific from there with other markers. Zonulin you run, especially if the individual is showing a lot of symptoms of gut barrier dysfunction or leaky gut. It's still a newer marker. That's where I'm saying it's not as easy to obtain on people, but it is a great test that if we do have the means to run a GI map and you want to add a zonulin test onto there, it's essentially the new biomarker to tell you about your pores along your GI tract. And leaky gut or increased gut permeability is about the opening of those pores. And the bigger they get, the more that these bigger size pathogens can pass through and get into your circulatory tract. So with that circulatory system. So with that being said, if your tight junctions or these pores are smaller, your zonulin's going to be lower. So zonulin's a really interesting marker. Homocysteine you can run with most providers, like your primary care physician or with us at Functional as well. Any of these except for the calcium score can be run with us at Functional, and the DEXA scan we can't run, but everything else we can run. The calcium score is based on your unique individual needs. So if you have a history of high cholesterol or family history of heart disease, as many of us do, asking your doctor for a calcium score. I'm finding many of us have not had this conversation with our doctor about this, and the calcium score can tell you about the percent calcification of the arteries or the hardening of your arteries. So I just like to put that information out there just so you can have that conversation with your doctor as needed. It's not a perfect test, but it is a great test. Other vitamins and minerals, metabolic CBC panels, which should be done anyway with your primary care physician, a thyroid panel with antibodies, as well as male, female hormones as we get older, depending on your needs and symptoms. So many of us dietitians at Functional like to run those tests. So if you do have questions, please, bring that up to your dietitian, bring it up to your doctor. We can also help you to navigate. So in ending blue zones, right, we want to think of our calls to action. So again, we went through these domains of diet, movement, our home, our mental well-being, medical assessment. We want to pick a few things that we can see ourselves applying, right? Can we take a walk after meals? Can we eat a little bit more beans or try to have a fruit or a vegetable at every meal? Can we share meals with friends? Maybe once a month you invite a neighbor over for dinner or practice gratitude daily. So you may have heard of like a gratitude stone. So it's a little rock that says gratitude or might not even say gratitude that you keep in your pocket. And every time you touch it, you're supposed to think of something you're grateful for as just a gentle, mindful reminder. If you're really interested in learning more, I know I put this at the end of each presentation. I might be drowning you guys with it, but I think it's really good to be aware of. If you haven't watched the documentary, please do. The last episode's talking about making artificial blue zones, and they were highlighting Singapore, as Singapore used to have a very poor life expectancy and now is becoming a modern day blue zones, and different ways that you can make your own community a blue zone. So that's what we're kind of trying to do today. So key takeaways, actually, this is more of the key takeaway is that the things that help us to lead a long, happy life are the things that make life worth living and the things that help us to live a longer life. So if you got anything from Blue Zones, it's eat a nourishing, nutritious meal that you enjoy with people that you love, that you laugh with music and movement and doing hobbies and activities in your day-to-day life that you just do because you want to do them, right? We're not stuck to this artificial world of, these big screen TVs taking up our wall, getting back out there, getting more into these more native traditions. And in doing so, you're going to be happier, but the goal is to hopefully live longer because of that too. So I just want to say thank you to you guys for doing the challenge and a big kudos to Emily. Emily's actually the winner of the challenge with the tracking. So kudos to Emily. And yeah, and just make sure you celebrate yourselves and just carry the torch forward. That's number one. Keep your eyes and ears out. We're looking to have a two-part blood sugar presentation in the upcoming month and a half to be on part one blood sugars, part two blood sugars slash the GLPs, the Ozempics, the Zepbounds, that as a topic. But does anyone have any questions for me?